Today I would like to show you a problem that I had with a dual boot system using Linux and Windows. So I had a SSD that has first Windows installed and afterwards Linux installed as a grub bootloader. Everything was working fine. Then I decided to switch the SSD and using another SSD with only Windows installed. Works, is okay. And then I tried to switch the SSD again. And what happened is that my UEFI BIOS decided to remove the bootloader and only the default bootloader from Windows was here and the Linux bootloader grub was gone. So the question was how to restore the bootloader and make it permanent, and I found a workaround how this can be done. And I would like to show you. You can create the grub bootloader and override the Windows bootloader with grub. So this is the default and fallback bootloader for your environment. I have a virtual machine here in Oracle VirtualBox, and as you can see, this is the system at the last state. Windows is booting as default, and as you can see, there is a Windows partition, and this here is the Linux partition. Here is a system partition, efi partition that contains bootloaders. And when we restart the machine, only is Windows loading, and we do not have any bootloader, no grub bootloader. So what we can do is to mount a live system. I'm using here Linux Mint and try to restore the bootloader. So from the devices, I'm using Linux Mint 22.2, and we're going to restart the system, and let's shut it down. And then we will have to press the escape key while booting. This will bring up the VirtualBox BIOS if you want to, where we can change the boot order. So the machine is starting up again. I'm switching to the terminal, pressing escape, and from the boot manager I'm booting now from the live ISO and start Linux Mint. The first thing I would like to do is to change the keyboard, because this is an English system, but I would like to use the German keyboard layout, because I have a German keyboard, of course. Yes. Okay, so the first step is we need super user rights, and what we want to do is to check gparted, because we want to know the devices. And we have here under devices SDA. SDA1 is efi partition, 3 is Windows, 5 is the Linux partition. And what we're going to do first is to mount the Linux partition, and the second step, mounting the efi partition into boot efi. So I'm creating a directory in the mount directory and call it system. You can call it whatever you want. Next we are going to mount the Linux partition first, so mount devices SDA5 into the system, and now we're going to mount the efi partition This is SDA1 in my case, and mount it to mount system boot efi. Now we can check if we have bootloaders in this partition. So this is mount system boot efi. There should be a efi as well, and as you can see we have boot Microsoft and Ubuntu. And in the first place what I would like to do is to restore the grub bootloader. So just in case we will create a new one, and afterwards we will use this and override the Microsoft Bootloader. We have to mount a few working directories. So we are going to bind the devices to device. Of course it's system device. The next would be proc sys and run. Now we want to change the root to the mounted Linux partition. This can be done by using change root to mount system. And now we're going to install grub again. So grub install target 664 efi. The efi-directory is boot efi. A bootloader ID I want to use grub. No-nvram, because the VRAM of the efi is the cause for my problems, and we're going to install it on device SDA, so no partition here, only the device here, so SDA. And let's install the bootloader again. Next we want to add a parameter to the configuration. This can be done by echoing the parameter, the group disable OS prober, and set it to false. So this would check which operating systems are installed, and we want to use it. So disable false means it should not be disabled, and we're writing this to etc default grub. Of course I missed here the redirect. Now this should be in the file, and we can say update. Great, so now we have a bootloader restored, but as I said, in my case, as soon as I would switch the devices again and plug in a new SSD drive and then plug it back, it would lose the bootloader and start Windows. So what we can do is to change the bootloader, the Windows bootloader, and replace it with our new bootloader. So let me exit from the change root here, and the first thing what I want to do is want to make a backup, because we need this backup file of the Microsoft Bootloader later to configure grub. So let's go to mount system boot efi, and here we should have grub, and we have Microsoft. And now we're going to the Microsoft boot, and here is a special file that needs to be preserved. It's this here. So we can say move this file fw.efi and make it boot fw backup. Now we should have this backup file here, and now we are going to copy the grub efi file into the Microsoft directory. So let's say copy mount system boot efi grub, and there should be an x64 file, and we are placing it in mount system boot efi Microsoft boot, and give it the original name, so boot w.efi. And when we check this out, now you can see we have a file that looks like the original Microsoft file, and we have this file here, which is our backup. Okay, so this looks good. We have created, we installed grub, and we have copied our new bootloader into the Microsoft directory and replaced the Microsoft bootloader with our ones. We can say reboot and check out what happens. If everything works as it should, we should see our Linux bootloader. And we have our Linux bootloader, and Mint, my original Mint installation, is hopefully now booting. Perfect, this is my original Linux Mint installation on this device. Now we need to make a few changes to the bootloader, and what I recommend is to use grub customizer. This makes it very easy. Just have to add a repository. And you can look for the grub customizer, and it will tell you should add a repository. Let's make an update. So update. And let's install the group customizer. It is here in the start menu, or you can start it from the command line. And when we see that we have a Windows boot manager here, we have to change this entry, because this would start our installation, and we're replacing just this value here to use our backupped Microsoft Bootloader. And click Save. This will update the grub configuration again. And now we should be able to boot into Windows as well. Voila! Windows is booting as well. So we have restored the bootloader, replaced the Microsoft Bootloader with our bootloader, and now we can permanently use this bootloader even if we replace the disk and put it in again. We will see that we have the same bootloader available, because now the default bootloader is our grub bootloader. Hope this is useful, and I would be happy if you leave a thumbs up or a comment. Thanks for watching.